Tons of great stuff going on here throughout this week. If you head to week 0, every Power 5 conference, every Power 5 team get talked about here during this series. We're predicting every single game for every single one of those teams. So it's a long series. You can also follow me on Twitter at Shanahan to get kind of the synopsis team by team. Also, great content coming out this week. We have Cornhusker Connection, another episode dropping today as well on the channel. So 2 episodes this week should be the case, 2 to 3 episodes a week going forward. So great, tons of content for Husker fans and college football fans in general. I feel like we spent most of our time talking about college football as a whole and the changing dynamics with that. So also some new stuff coming out. We got our new sports betting show, Bookie Brook, coming out next week. Get you ahead of the first slate of the college football season, then get you some head start on some of the NFL futures to watch out for. Then also our Big 12 shows coming out next week as well. Me and Drew Russell on the call there. We're talking everything Big 12. So it's going to be a great time here. Plenty of content coming out here on Cornhusker Connection. And today, like I said, we're talking about the Big 10, baby. We're going through every single team, every single game, predicting all of it. So as always, before we kind of get into the thick of it as far as game by game, I kind of just want to give off a baseline on how I'm feeling about each team going into the season. But overall, Big 10, probably the most top-heavy conference in college football the last couple of years. I think the gap even between number 2 and number 3 is substantial. And Penn State doing all that it can to kind of close that gap. They're probably the next team up to make a jump into that tier. But the rest of the conference has been really disappointing the last couple of years. But I think things are trending up depth-wise from the top to bottom portion of the conference. Nebraska and Wisconsin both made huge coaching hires, and I think huge coaching upgrades in the offseason, added with current coaches like Mel Tucker, Brett Bielema, James Franklin. There's a lot of potential, and not even mentioning names like Lincoln Riley, Chip Kelly, Kalen DeBoer, all coming to town next season with the addition of the West Coast teams. But for this year, a lot of the teams to go over here. Michigan in the start. I don't know what you really want me to say. I don't think I have anything insightful or unique to add. They're good. They're really good. Better than they were last year, who was also really good. J.J. McCarthy, I believe, is going to be a Heisman finalist before his time in Ann Arbor is over. The RB room is NFL ready, and they continue to just reshuffle it and continue to build elite offensive line combinations. So no reason to think it's going to be anything other than that for Michigan. Ohio State, on the other hand, they do have to replace a lot of key players. Like, first of all, quarterback C.J. Stroud. It's a tough task, but it's really hard to picture anybody that they could put out there behind center being less than exceptional. And, I mean, same kind of thing when C.J. Stroud took over. It's like, well, who's this guy? Well, he's going to end up being a top 5 NFL draft pick. So I can't imagine that whoever they put out there is going to be anything less than exceptional. And he's got help of a crazy good wide receiver room that they continue to replenish like it's nothing, including my sleeper Heisman pick, Marvin Harrison Jr. They do lose 3 offensive line starters to the NFL, so they'll have some new hats in this room. But really, the thing with Ohio State is nothing matters until Thanksgiving weekend anyway. So there's plenty of time to get everyone acclimated, everyone on the same page, and everyone up to speed with expectations of Ohio State. Penn State, if there's a team who can turn this conference from a 2-team league to a 3-team league, it's the Nittany Lions. Fresh off a big Rose Bowl win, James Franklin has this team due for a big step up. They got 16 starters back from a team that went undefeated against non-playoff teams last season, which I feel like isn't talked about enough. Yeah, they went 10-2, which 10-2 is good in its own right, but if you take off Michigan and Ohio State, who are top 2 or 3 teams in the country, they're undefeated. So it is what it is. But overall, a lot of good expectations coming from Penn State. Quarterback Drew Allar is what experts are expecting. If that comes to be, he could be a huge upgrade for this offense. The defense isn't that far off from being the best in the league and should continue to be a really under-the-radar NFL fact. They had 5 draft picks last year on that side of the ball. Maryland, I'm confused. The more I learn about this team, the more I'm shocked that we aren't talking about them more. 8 wins from last year, including playing Michigan really tough towards the end. They cleared some major program-defining hurdles for the program last year. Their first 8-win campaign in more than a decade. First ranked win in their last 16 tries. If I were to sell you on another jump from Maryland, it's the progress from head coach Mike Locksley. He keeps moving this program forward, trending in the right direction. Outside of Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, they likely won't see another ranked team in their schedule, which does mean a lot of opportunities out there for them to pick up wins. They bring back a lot of experience from quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. So if they do take a step back, they do lose 11 starters from a year ago and mostly rebuilding their offensive line. But like I said, if this is going to be a real good opportunity for them to show if they have any real staying power or if the stars just kind of aligned last year. Michigan State. As a Colorado fan, I had a ton of fun watching Michigan State last season. 5-7, fantastic. You want to poach Mel Tucker from Colorado? Have fun not going to bowl games. But a lot of trends have them right there at that 5, 6, 7 win mark. They do lose their starting quarterback and wide receiver after spring camp. Talent says 6 wins or so, but I also do unfortunately believe in Mel Tucker. I think he's going to be able to get the best out of his players. So if he can maximize this team, they could be right back in the fold for that second tier in the Big Ten. Rutgers. Head coach Greg Schiano, I think, has done a great job grinding the Scarlet Knights out of the basement of the Big Ten after an incredible 21-game Big Ten losing streak. Their offense should be improved, just hoping that there's not much room for them to be much worse than they were last year. They do have a sneaky good defense, and front seven should open up some eyes against some of those mid-tier Big Ten teams. They're good enough to make a bowl game, certainly, but the schedule is going to be tricky. They have the toughest schedule in the Big Ten. They get, obviously, the teams in the East, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, but they also draw Iowa and Wisconsin out of the West. So it'll be a real grind for them to try to get to 6 wins. I'm not sure if this is the year for it. Indiana still trying to capture the magic that they had a few years ago before COVID with Michael Penix Jr. Offense should take a step up and should be the most productive since then. Maybe even try to push for that 30-point per game mark. Defense is pretty cloudy. They only bring back 3 starters. They hit the transfer portal really hard to fill in some gaps. So if they really find some diamond in the roughs, they may not drop off too bad, but they'll certainly need some things to go their way to get to that 6th win. Now out in the West, Wisconsin. As a Husker fan, they remind me so much of where Nebraska was a few years into the new Big Ten. They were still productive, still winning a seemingly good amount of games, but there wasn't a lot of juice. It seemed like they were trending downwards as far as like recruiting goes, as far as competitiveness goes at the top of the conference. A lot like when Nebraska had to fire Bo Pelini, and Wisconsin went a similar direction when they cut ties with Paul Chryst. And they got ahead of that before they saw the huge decrease, hoping to kind of capture back some of that momentum. Nebraska didn't get it right, but I think Wisconsin did. So, certainly many calls for interim head coach Jim Leonhard to be the full-time head coach moving forward. A lot of people with Wisconsin ties really thought that he was a great fit, but they ended up going with Luke Fickell, who I think is one of the best coaches in college football. I think that's a home run. I think that's exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for a coach to take them from good to great. And there's certainly a very high ceiling with any Luke Fickell team. I mean, Cincinnati, the only Group of 5 team to ever make a college football playoff. So the sky's the limit for Wisconsin if he can hit like I think he will. So he's expected to take this 7-8 win program to that 10-11 win mark here soon. If they don't win the West this year, there's probably going to be pretty strong ties to some growing pains. They're looking to revamp the offense to more of a modern spread look. But they add Tanner Mordecai from the portal, very productive quarterback at SMU. And there's also a universe where they run away with this division pretty handedly. Iowa. I am a Iowa hater through and through. And it's my favorite thing to do. But seeing how they optically elevate their program with some of the others that have had actual success on a national level, it drives me nuts. And considering Kirk Ferentz's long tenure, it feels like they reward mediocrity as much as any football program in the country. However, they have a formula that I think is very beneficial for them, especially not being in a recruiting hotbed. It's focus on development and talent that raises the floor of the program above all else. Because unless you're Ohio State or USC, you can't really turn a team from 4 to 12 wins in a season or two. So like I said, they like the recruiting base of those teams I just listed. So their path to prominence is building a 9-win program, building a good football program. Then hope that you get a few opportunities where the stars align, and between experienced talents, favorable schedule, and throwing a dash of luck as any championship team needs. That's the situation where the ceiling gets raised from that 8-9 win mark to that 10-11 win mark for a team like Iowa. And it's very unfortunate for me. I do think the stars are aligning pretty well for Iowa. Cade McNamara is probably going to be the best quarterback I've seen with my own eyes. They grabbed another Michigan transfer at tight end. They somehow missed out on both Michigan and Ohio State out of the East on the schedule, so they should be favored to win every game at home. Kinnick Stadium, a very cute stadium, 7th biggest in the Big Ten, so that's top half is pretty impressive, I'd say. Illinois, Brett Bielema has changed his program. He took a 2-win Illini team to 5 wins his first year and then 8 wins last year. They also add Wisconsin defensive coordinator Jim Leonard as an analyst, which I think is a huge win considering how talented he was as a head coaching candidate. And I think if the coaching cycle had gone a little bit differently, he could definitely be the head of a college football program right now. Likely won't be at Illinois long, but this is a very good sign for this 2023 team. They do lose Chase Brown and Tommy DeVito from the backfield, but they should be able to maintain production from last year's 25-point per game mark. They avoid Michigan and Ohio State's out west, out east. They get Penn State at home, so they're very well set up to be right there in the mix for the Big Ten West. Minnesota, 9+ wins in their last 3 non-COVID seasons. The Golden Gophers have certainly made a name for themselves with PJ Fleck as a genuinely good football program, which growing up I didn't think was really possible. If they do take a step back, it's going to likely be because they lost their all-time rusher, Muhammad Ibrahim, and their number 2 all-time passer in Tanner Morgan. So you can't overlook their impact both on and off the field as some big pieces and big leaders responsible for building up this program to, like I said, a genuinely good football program. If they can survive an upset bid from Nebraska, they sure could get off to a hot start. That would help out work out any kinks as they won't see their first ranked opponent until October. Nebraska, go Big Red, baby. You know me. As a fan, I was so out on the program after their Week 0 loss to Northwestern last year. In fact, the whole Cornhusker Connection network started with our Entering the Transfer Portal podcast last year because I was in the fan transfer portal. I was looking for a new team. I was looking to jump ship. I didn't believe in their ability to get a top head coach. Of course, as the season wore down, I came to the conclusion that I think they're going to get it right. And they did. I think they got exactly who they needed in Matt Rule. You know, some of the other big name coaching hires, Coach Prime, as fun as he is, I don't think he's what they needed. Luke Fickell, I think, is the best coach schematically that was out for hire last year. But we needed somebody who's a program builder, and that's Matt Rule's specialty. He's had experience building programs from nothing into reaching peaks of the program history. And he has a great opportunity for some huge momentum early with Minnesota and Colorado on the schedule the first 4 weeks. Throw in a couple of FCS Group of 5 opponents that should be pretty easy tune-up games, and they could be rocking and rolling. Even 3-1 going into the Michigan game would be such an electric momentum start for Matt Rule in his tenure in Colorado. And, you know, I was big on Scott Frost, and I think he's a good football coach, but he just wasn't able to rebuild the program, build the roots that I think Matt Rule can. And then also, he didn't get that momentum at first. His first football game was canceled due to weather. His second football game against Colorado, they lost. And then it seemed like his whole tenure, he just never was able to get this program on its feet, despite having tons of talent. Those guys are torching up preseason in the NFL right now. I don't see them being able to give the division a real run this year, but they should be able to end some long losing streaks within the conference and get set up for a huge year 2 under Matt Rule. Northwestern, yikes. I don't know if there's a team. I can't imagine there's a team that's had it tougher than Northwestern since the spring, losing head coach Pat Fitzgerald in the hazing scandal. And even beyond losing your coach at this time of the year, they were 1-11 last year. They were losing by an average of 2+ touchdowns per game, only being outdone by Colorado's disastrous 2022 campaign. Interim head coach David Braun will have to steady the ship and basically rebuild their offense from scratch. They lose 8 starters from that 1-11 team. Kind of the goals have shifted to winning some football games, to just showing flashes, trying to get some momentum, hopefully to attract a quality head coach at the end of the year, which they haven't had to hire a new head coach in almost 2 decades. So this is a really pivotal 12-month window here for Northwestern if they can get some momentum. I know that administration-wise, they'd love this football program to get going. They're rebuilding a whole new stadium for them. This is the big one for Northwestern. But football-wise this year, Purdue. Jeff Brom took the opportunity to cash in on the success he's had at Purdue for a head coaching job at his alma mater, Louisville. Schedule does first-time head coach Ryan Walters no real favors. They draw Michigan and Ohio State from the East. They play their next toughest road games. They play their next toughest games on the road. They play Nebraska, Northwestern, and Virginia Tech on the road. They have some winnable games there, but certainly going to be a grind to get to any bowl game and get that rolling. But that's where we are. I think I'm so excited for the Big Ten as a Husker fan. I think good things are ahead for the Huskers, but we'll start picking some games here. The first couple of weeks are usually pretty easy. Nebraska and Minnesota, Thursday night game. We'll come back to this one because I feel like we can skip through a lot of these. So I think Michigan State picks up the win against Central Michigan. Michigan over, I don't even really need to see who that other team is. East Carolina, Iowa over Utah State. Iowa has no problems there at the seventh biggest stadium in the Big Ten. Not the country, of the Big Ten Conference. I just want to make that very perfectly clear. Purdue at Fresno State. I think Purdue grinds out a win there. Indiana, Ohio State. Oh boy, almost just by default gave that to the home team. Ohio State over Indiana. I think if they play later, like week 2 or week 3, or even like the first or second Big Ten game in Indiana, maybe it's different. But I think Ohio State has so much time to prepare for this game, and they're not going to miss. Buffalo and Wisconsin, give me the Badgers. Luke Fickell's debut, I think, is a win. Maryland picks up a win against Towson. Illinois over Toledo. The Big Ten rolling. Penn State at West Virginia. I don't hate West Virginia. I haven't done my Big 12 preview yet, but I don't think – let's be real. I think Penn State's going to be one of the best teams in the country. I don't think this is where they falter. Rutgers and Northwestern, kind of bottom of the barrel teams here. I think Greg Schiano is in a much better shape to pick up the win, especially at home. Nebraska and Minnesota. Now, so as a Nebraska fan, I've been thinking about this game quite a lot. And it's going back and forth. I look at how close Nebraska has been to competing with teams like Minnesota the last couple of years. You think, man, if they just have a couple little tweaks, they're almost there. But it's just these little things that I think Matt Rule will shape up. So I think Nebraska's going to win. And then they lose Xavier Betts off the team 3 weeks before the first game. So I'm like, well, now Minnesota's back there. But then Minnesota, like I said, loses Tanner Morgan and Mohamed Ibrahim. And I just think Minnesota has too much to replace that. And I don't think that they have the talent to just plug and play. Where Nebraska, they're also replacing so many players on their offense, but they're replacing everything. They're replacing the whole system. They're replacing the coaching staff. Everything's new for them. So they're, I think, better built to handle that change. Where you lose a pivotal part in what's made this team so good the last few years. Give me Nebraska here. Now, granted, also take what I say with a grain of salt here. I probably would have picked Nebraska over Minnesota the last 5 straight years, and they've lost every single one. So I could very well be wrong here, but go Big Red. All right, so after week 1, not too many teams with a loss here early on. Indiana, Minnesota, Northwestern, and Rutgers all picking up conference losses, but no non-conference losses, which we'll see how the Big Ten favors here in the next couple of weeks. Week 2, let's get underway. Illinois and Kansas, Power 5 versus Power 5. Oh man, this one's tough. Because I think these are 2 very similarly skilled teams. And I don't think Kansas has a huge home field advantage here. But I do think that they have a very big advantage on the quarterback side. And if it comes down to making a play or 2 at the end, give me Kansas. Indiana State, give me the Hoosiers. Ohio State, Youngstown State. Maybe if the Penguins still had Bo Pelini, who took him to a national championship 2 years after Nebraska canned him. It is what it is. Nebraska, Colorado. This game's going to be awesome. It's going to be, well, I don't know if it's going to be a great football game, but it tickles that part of my brain that makes me so happy. Where just like seeing the Nebraska logo and the Colorado logo on the same ticker and seeing the red and the white and the black and the gold, it fills me with joy. As both the Colorado and a Nebraska fan, I think Nebraska picks up the win here. I think that they just have some of the bolts tightened down a little bit easier than Colorado does. Purdue and Virginia Tech. I'm not very high on Virginia Tech. Man. Virginia Tech is a tough place to play, so I don't want to discredit that too much. You know what? I do think that Virginia Tech picks up the win here. Sorry, Purdue. They pick up a loss. The first non-conference. Oh, I guess can't. Yeah, never mind. Illinois did lose non-conference. Penn State beats Delaware. Don't have to think about that one too hard. Michigan State, they win. Does Northwestern beat UTEP? You know, just for the sake that I don't talk about UTEP on this channel, let me give Northwestern a bone while I can. Very real chance that they don't, but it is what it is. Iowa and Iowa State, part of the Cyhawk series. I'm a Cyclone lover just by association of me hating Iowa so much. Hilltop is a tough place to play. I would even argue it's the best stadium in the state of Iowa, but I think that the talent gap is too big. Minnesota and Eastern Michigan, give me Minnesota. Rutgers and Temple, give me Rutgers. Washington State and Wisconsin. Pullman's not an easy place to play. Washington State's not a bad football program. This is probably going to be the game where we get a peek at what Wisconsin can be this year. Because if it is the year about transitioning and rebuilding, this is a game that they lose. And a game, that I don't think that anybody would be crazy upset if they did. However, as a Luke Fickell fan, I think that they're going to figure it out quicker than later. They give me Maryland over Charlotte. All right, so a handful of teams still 2-0, including Iowa, Maryland, Michigan State, Rutgers, Ohio State, Nebraska. Those three teams all 2-0 with a conference win. Wisconsin also 2-0. A good start here for a lot of these teams. Week 3, Virginia and Maryland. I don't feel great about either of these teams, really. You know what? Yeah, I'll give Maryland a pretty comfortable win here. Illinois and Penn State. Give me the Nittany Lions on the road. Illinois picks up a conference loss. Wisconsin and Georgia Southern. They did beat Nebraska last year, but Wisconsin, I think, is much better than Nebraska was last year. So Louisville and Indiana. Big Ten versus ACC matchup. Going to give Indiana the bump here. I think this is an opportunity for them to pick up a good Power 5 win. Western Michigan and Iowa, give me the Hawkeyes. Virginia Tech and Rutgers. Oh, man. Lots of ACC matchups. I love it. Give me Virginia Tech and Rutgers. Give me Rutgers. Yeah, I do like Greg Schiano, so yeah, I'll put a stamp on that. Minnesota and North Carolina. I have really big high hopes for North Carolina. I think Drake May at home outduels whoever's behind center for the Gophers. Northwestern and Duke. Give me Duke. I think they're pretty good. I don't think Northwestern is very good at all. Give me Ohio State, Washington, and Michigan. I am so high on Washington. I think that they have this game circled. This is a game that we can't slip up on, and this is a game where people are going to be watching. People are going to be paying attention to us beating Michigan State in East Lansing. Nebraska and Northern Illinois. Nebraska, if they can get through Minnesota, 3-0 is absolutely on the table. Purdue and Syracuse, give me Purdue. Michigan and Bowling Green, give me Michigan. After week 4, I think we really start getting into Big Ten play here in week 4. A little bit more, not a crazy amount. But Iowa, Maryland, and Michigan, Wisconsin, still undefeated, as well as Rutgers, Ohio State, Penn State, and Nebraska. They all have a conference win at least as well. So great stuff from those teams. Surprised that Rutgers is still in there. I guess that they did schedule a good non-conference schedule that gives them some opportunity. So good on them for taking advantage. Wisconsin and Purdue. Luke Fickell's Big Ten opener on the road. West Lafayette, a Purdue team that's been fine. Give me Wisconsin there. Rutgers and Michigan by a million. Also happens to be Jim Harbaugh's first game back from his 3-week vacation. I have a theory on that, is that he was so sure that he was going to get suspended for the first 4 games that he and his wife made plans those first 3 Saturdays, because you don't get too many fall Saturdays. They probably haven't gotten a single fall Saturday, at least since he's been back at Michigan, and other than the few years he spent in San Francisco. He was back in college before that, so yeah, maybe they just needed a vacation. Maryland and Michigan State. Oh, this is a good one. I like both of these teams, and they're both kind of very skill-wise. I'll give Michigan State the boost for being at home. East Lansing's a pretty tough place to play. Maryland's got some work to do. Iowa and Penn State, like I said, unfortunately very high on the Hawkeyes, but Happy Valley's a tough beast. I think they're definite. I don't know exactly where they rank as far as stadium goes, but I know it's higher than 7th. So keep that in mind. Notre Dame and Ohio State. So now a big part of this project is I don't like to go through the schedules too thoroughly beforehand, just because that's what I want this to be, is me going through the schedule in real time. But I did kind of concoct this solution, this path for Penn State to make it to the Big Ten championship game, and I think the first part of that is Ohio State. No, you know what? Hold on. I made it through the SEC, the ACC, and I'll probably make it through the rest of the Big Ten without doing this. But we got to flip a coin. Michigan or Notre Dame's the home team, so they'll be heads. Ohio State is the visiting team. They are tails. It's tails. Ohio State. Go Buckeyes. I feel good about that. I was really looking for a way to pick Notre Dame there, but it is what it is. Indiana over Akron. All right, back to it. Florida Atlantic, I like a lot. I like Tom Herman as a coach when he's not at the University of Texas, which is a whole different ballgame other than just being a football coach. They also have Nebraska legend Casey Thompson as their starting quarterback. Don't think it's quite enough. I really like Illinois. I will be cheering so hard for Florida Atlantic, and I think that they're a good team, but not quite that good. Nebraska over Louisiana Tech. This feels like Nebraska, even when they were good, not great, but like in the early to mid to late to 2000s, there's always one non-conference game that was just dumb close for no reason. This feels like that, but Nebraska sweats it out. Give me Minnesota over Northwestern. On the road, doesn't matter. All right, so the undefeated team starting to dwindle down in the conference. Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio State, Penn State, and Wisconsin all undefeated going into the first kind of full week of conference play. Everyone's played a conference opponent so far, except Illinois, I think. But now as we're kind of getting into the thick of it, here we go. Louisiana Lafayette, Minnesota. Give me the Gophers, Purdue, and Illinois. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. New head coach. Give me the Illini. Yeah, I think this is a pretty good opportunity for them here to pick up a road win. Indiana and Maryland. I like both of these teams really, but I like Maryland a little bit more. And hopefully at this point is when they start really gelling together. Michigan and Nebraska, Fox, big noon kickoff. In Lincoln, Wolverines struggled last time they were in Lincoln. We're down in the fourth quarter. Doesn't matter. I'm excited for the game. I love seeing Nebraska on the big Fox game with Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson. I love seeing the blue M and the red N on the same Fox ticker. Michigan State and Iowa in Kinnick Stadium, the seventh biggest stadium in the Big Ten. Give me the Hawks here. It feels like one of those weird 2 p.m. games where they might be overlooking Michigan State. Probably not though, but yeah, I like Iowa pretty good there. Penn State Northwestern. Penn State I don't think has a tough time there. Wagner and Rutgers. Give me the Scarlet Knights. All right, so after week 5, a couple of undefeated teams go down like Nebraska. That still leaves Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and Wisconsin undefeated. Other teams with just one loss: Iowa, Maryland, Illinois, Nebraska, and Rutgers. Rutgers doing better than I thought they'd be doing. Week 6, Nebraska going to Illinois. I want Nebraska to win this game, but I also know that they haven't had any success against Illinois recently. I also know they're adding Jim Leonard from Wisconsin, who has done a fantastic job on the defensive end, shutting down Nebraska the last basically forever, pretty much. So it's tough to imagine. Yeah, give me the Illini here. Give me the Illini. If it's in Memorial Stadium, I feel a little bit better about picking Nebraska, but no thank you. Not a chance. Ohio State picks up the win against Maryland, Wisconsin, Rutgers. Wisconsin stays undefeated. Northwestern and Howard. I don't know anything about Howard, but it sounds like a very smart school. Purdue and Iowa. Give me Purdue, or not give me Purdue. I'd like to take Purdue, but favorable matchup in the 7th biggest Big Ten stadium. Michigan and Minnesota. Gap's too big to really put anything out other than this. Nothing changes with the undefeated teams. Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio State still undefeated. Nebraska drops out of that one-loss tier. So Illinois, Iowa still with one loss. So things really starting to kind of take shape here as we enter into week 7. Michigan State and Rutgers. This is a tough one. Rutgers at home. I'm not very big on Michigan State, but it seems like they play well when they're not supposed to win, and I think they'll be favored here. So you know what? Give me Rutgers at home. East Lansing, I'm not taking Rutgers absolutely, but in Rutgers, I don't think that gives them much of an advantage per se, but I think it does even the playing field a little bit. Illinois and Maryland, I feel a little bit better about Illinois than I do Maryland. Maryland's pretty good too. you know what? I changed the colors. Give me Penn State over Massachusetts. Probably the worst team in college in Division I football last year. Iowa and Wisconsin. Camp Randall Stadium likely at 11 in the morning for Fox Big Noon kickoff. I like Iowa. This is going to be Fick's first real Big Ten test. Man. First real Big Ten test at Camp Randall Stadium. Let me come back to that one. Michigan beats Indiana. Ohio State beats Purdue. That was quick. It didn't buy me much time at all. So the home team has won this series every year since 2018. Is that home field advantage at Camp Randall enough to overcome the coaching experience? I think it is. If Iowa does pull this one off, I'm not surprised. If it was in the seventh biggest stadium in the Big Ten, I probably do give it to Iowa because of that. But yeah, give me Wisconsin here at home. Undefeated teams stay the same. Michigan, Ohio State, and Wisconsin and Penn State. Do I like Wisconsin being undefeated? I think they're due for a loss. Iowa game's going to be tough. Okay, I think I know how things are shaped up. Okay, so we'll stick with that. And we'll move on. Week 8. Rutgers and Indiana. Rutgers coming in hot, 5-2. I think they fall. 50-50 toss-up game. I mean, just a riveting Big Ten matchup. But I hope UCLA and USC are ready for games against Rutgers and Indiana. That's prime Big Ten football. Iowa and Minnesota and Kinnick bouncing off a loss against Wisconsin. I think the Hawks are back. Give me Minnesota to lose. Michigan and Michigan State. Michigan's toughest test to this point. I think Spartan Stadium feels like they always get rowdy. Talent's so big though, like it's not enough. It's not enough these days. Wisconsin and Illinois. Give me Illinois at home. I like them. Wisconsin buzzing. I think they escape Camp Randall with the win against Iowa. I don't think they can do it on the road. Nebraska and Northwestern. Nebraska's back, baby. We're back in the driver's seat. They beat up on Northwestern. Penn State and Ohio State. Oh, man. It was a good one. Ohio State at home. Drew Willar making probably what do I have here? There, his 7th start. So I guess he's kind of acclimated. But Ohio State's a different beast than anything he's seen so far. So I think they give Penn State their first loss. A couple of undefeated teams go down this week. Wisconsin drops to 6-1, their first loss of the season, as well as Penn State. As far as undefeated teams in the conference, that brings us to Michigan being undefeated, Ohio State's undefeated. So those two being the last 2 undefeated teams overall in the conference. I don't think that's surprising to anybody. I think the biggest surprise so far is I have Illinois at 6-1 with 4-0 conference record. So they're in control of the West. Got the control in their hands. Penn State, Wisconsin, both with 1 loss in the Big Ten. Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota, all with 2 losses. So in theory, still in the thick of it in that Big Ten West. That gets it's going to get real crowded here. Week 9, Purdue and Nebraska. This is one of those losing streaks that I think Nebraska amends. In Memorial Stadium, I think they're buzzing here. Whoops. I'm seeing red so much that it's tough to see any other color. And even last year in West Lafayette, Nebraska had a chance to win that game as big favorites and hopefully getting some momentum. They didn't, but they were close last year. I think they'll get it done this year. Penn State's in Indiana. Penn State bounces back. They know that they can't be losing games to teams like Indiana, Maryland, and Northwestern. No, I'm not. I'm not going to give this game to Northwestern. I want to give them a game, but coming up because they're the only team in the Big Ten without a win in conference. Michigan State and Minnesota. Give me the Gophers. I like the Gophers here. This could, yeah. I like Multiker a lot. I don't think that it's so big the gap there is so big to win on the road there. Interesting game here. Ohio State at Wisconsin. Like I said, I like Fickle. I like Wisconsin. Camp Randall's a tough place to play. I saw a stat that's very concerning to me to pick any team over Ohio State. Ryan Day hasn't lost a single conference football game to a team outside of Michigan. The stars are kind of aligning for an upset here, but I'm not going to get caught reaching for an upset and really disrupting the conference flow here by picking Wisconsin. So give me Ohio State. Rooting for Wisconsin. I think this would be a huge win for them, but I can't pull the trigger. So now the Big Ten West starting to take shape. Illinois still undefeated in conference play. They got their toughest games ahead of them. Up next, we also have Wisconsin, Iowa, and Nebraska with 2 wins. Nebraska still to play Iowa and Wisconsin. Wisconsin already beating Iowa in the season. Minnesota's not too far behind either, but they lose a head-to-head to Nebraska. Big Ten East, shocker, is shaping up to be a 2-horse race. Ohio State and Michigan, both undefeated. Penn State, right, in third place, where we probably expected them to be with 1 loss. Then it drops off a little bit from there. But here we go, Week 10, baby. We're flying. Illinois and Minnesota. I think Illinois is a better team. I think I like their coaching a little bit better with the tandem of Leonard and Double B. This is a game that really good football programs win. And I don't think that they're there yet. So give me the Gophers. I think this is the point where the Big Ten West teams should start eating up each other. Iowa and Northwestern. Give me Iowa. Would be very funny if they lost to Northwestern here. Nebraska at Michigan State. East Lansing, a tough place to play. I remember a couple of years ago, Nebraska dominated defensively against Michigan State before giving up a punt return for a touchdown. Brought the game to overtime, and Michigan State won there. That one hurt. Nebraska and Michigan State. East Lansing's a tough place to play. They need to win out to make a bowl game. I think this is one that they want more. Give me Michigan State at home. I think next year we'll have a much better picture on what that Michigan State football program looks like with Mel Tucker. So I think going forward, they may not get as much benefit of the doubt, but in this case, yeah, I'll give it to them. Ohio State, Rutgers, don't have to think about that one too much. Sorry, Scarlet Knights. Maryland and Penn State, give me the Lions. Maryland, after a good start, starting to tumble. Purdue doesn't get to hang with Michigan. Indiana and Wisconsin. Give me the Badgers. Give me the Badgers. All right, so after that, undefeated teams stay the same. Michigan, Ohio State both pick up wins. Penn State right behind them with one loss. Illinois picks up their first loss in Big Ten play. So now that really narrows down the field there. Minnesota with 2 losses in the Big Ten. Wisconsin with 2 losses. Iowa. So that's starting to shape up. Nebraska drops a game. They'll need some things to fall their way here the next few weeks, but they do still play Wisconsin and Iowa. So in theory, they already have the head-to-head win over Minnesota. So in theory, if they win out, Illinois would have to pick up a couple more losses. So not looking too great for the Big Red as far as making a trip to Indianapolis here. Michigan and Penn State. Penn State played kind of tough last year. Happy Valley is a tough place to play. Beaver Stadium, University Park, Pennsylvania. On Fox, already announced, big noon kickoff. Because it's big noon kickoff, yeah, give me Michigan. Night game, maybe. That's a tough ball game to win. Not so much here. Maryland, I think this is a game that Nebraska wins, a team that's kind of gone back and forth with them. You would think that Nebraska's step up to prominence would include winning games like Maryland here. Maryland 5-4, 6-3. Give me the home team. Ohio State takes care of business against Michigan State. Illinois and Indiana. I think the Illini bounce back. Minnesota and Purdue. Purdue hasn't been good all year. This seems like a gritty game that the Boilermakers pull out. This seems like a game where Minnesota really misses Tanner Morgan and Abraham. Northwestern, Wisconsin. Give me the Badgers. They're dialed in. Iowa and Rutgers. Give me Iowa. Good week for the home team. Whoops. Okay, so I missed a Minnesota game. So they're 3-4 in the conference. They're toast. So basically, Illinois is in the driver's seat here entering week 12. They play Iowa this week. And who do they play next week? Illinois plays Northwestern. So they win, they're in. They beat Iowa, they're in the Big Ten championship game. Even if they lose, because they got head-to-head against Iowa. I think they got head-to-head against Wisconsin and head-to-head against Nebraska. Wisconsin has head-to-head, had the opportunity to get head-to-head against Nebraska, kick them out. They have head-to-head over Iowa. So the Big Ten race, as kind of predicted going in, is going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be more interesting because I think Iowa beats them in Kinnick. So Illinois picks up their possibly fateful second Big Ten loss. Michigan beats up on Maryland. Michigan State and Indiana. Indiana's at home. Both teams know they need to win this game to make a bowl game. Give me Mel Tucker here. Give me Mel Tucker. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt here. Minnesota at Ohio State. No, thank you. Man, rough season for Minnesota. That's a tough way to go. Purdue, I think, beats Northwestern. If they are going to win a conference game, I think it's this one. I don't feel too bad about piling on a bunch of losses for them. Rutgers and Penn State. Like the Scarlet Knights, not that much. Maybe Penn State at home. And now this one's going to be fun. It's on NBC, National Broadcast Channel. Nebraska and Wisconsin, two first-year head coaches trying to get their traditionally relevant programs back to the top. Give me Wisconsin. I think they're just a step ahead in the process than Nebraska is. I think moving forward, this should be a very even series, even matchup. But right now, I think Wisconsin just has to step. Night game in Cam Randall, at least I'm assuming night game. It's on NBC. Final week of the season. We have a Big East championship game, of course, the game, Ohio State and Michigan. Big Ten West scenario is a little bit more complex than that. Illinois. So Iowa and Nebraska. So Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin each have 2 losses. So Illinois has the head-to-head against Wisconsin. Wisconsin has the head-to-head over Iowa. And I think Iowa has the head-to-head over Illinois. Okay, so I finally narrowed down what the Big Ten tiebreaker is going to look like at the end of the season. So right now, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa are all 6-2 in the conference. So they have one conference game left, all of them. Wisconsin has losses against Ohio State and Illinois. Iowa has losses against Wisconsin and Penn State. Illinois has losses against Iowa and Minnesota. First level of tiebreaker is their winning percentage against each other. So if one team had beaten the other 2 teams, that team would get the nod here. But the next layer of tiebreaker is winning percentage within your division. So that excludes Illinois here because they lost to Iowa in their division and Minnesota in their division. So that's 2 losses in the division, where Wisconsin only lost to Illinois in their division and Iowa only lost to Wisconsin in their division. So then it narrows it down to Iowa and Wisconsin gets the head-to-head advantage over Iowa. So if all 3 of these teams win in week 13, Wisconsin gets the tiebreaker. They go to the Big Ten championship game. As far as the East Division goes, of course, whoever wins Ohio State and Michigan, that they go to the Big Ten championship game. So kind of go through the non so relevant games. I think Penn State beats Michigan State here. I think where are we at here? Rutgers sitting at 5-6. They're looking for a bowl game. Maryland also looking for a bowl game. Just give me the home. No, give me Maryland. I like Maryland more. I do, in fact, like Maryland more. And I don't think Rutgers has such a crazy home field that it assuages that. Indiana and Purdue don't really have much feelings on either of these teams. I guess give me Purdue. They're at home. Coin toss game. Northwestern and Illinois. This one is kind of the first big one that we'll talk about here. So Illinois picks up the win against Northwestern. So I don't think that they're going to be the ones to ruin Illinois' season. So Illinois can still make the Big Ten championship game if Iowa and Wisconsin lose. Because then that would put them at 3 losses. Illinois is back in the driver's seat. But they need both of those teams to lose. Wisconsin and Minnesota. Minnesota needs this win for a bowl game. Okay, so let me come back to this one. Ohio State, Michigan, Ann Arbor. I don't know why I waited so long. I like Michigan a lot here. It feels weird to have them beat Ohio State 3 times in a row, but also Ohio State used to beat Michigan every year. So Michigan wins, they go to the Big Ten championship game. Iowa and Nebraska. I'm going to be real honest. I don't want to be objective here. I don't want to look too hard at this. This could be the best Iowa football team of all time and the worst Nebraska football team of all time. We've actually seen pretty close to that here, though, in matchups the last couple of years where Iowa hasn't been able to really run away from Nebraska. But give me Nebraska at home. Yeah, I mean, there's no objectiveness here. I can't picture Nebraska losing to Iowa. So now that brings us to Wisconsin and Minnesota. If Wisconsin wins, they are they're in. They're in the Big Ten championship game. They have 2 losses. They have the head-to-head over Illinois. Wait a minute, is that right? Hold up. Let me go back here real quick. I don't think I like Minnesota only having I went to this point. So they play Louisiana Lafayette, that's a win. They lose to Michigan, nothing I can do about that. I'm playing week 7. They lose at Iowa. I'm not doing anything about that. They beat Michigan State at home. They beat Illinois at home. They lose to Purdue. No, I'm gonna change that. Yeah. Let me change that here. I don't like going back and changing things like this, but there's no way that. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. Purdue's not that good. So they have losses against Nebraska. They also lose to North Carolina. I'm not doing anything about that. Okay. And then I think they do play spoiler to Wisconsin. Give me Minnesota here. So Illinois is in the Big Ten championship. Illinois is in the Big Ten championship. Can you believe it? All right. So that wraps up our week-by-week breakdown. Here's how it shaped up. So we have Illinois and Michigan going to the Big Ten championship game. Illinois with a good Big Ten season. They lost early out of conference to pick up a 3rd loss overall, but with wins over everybody in the Big Ten that they played except for Iowa and Minnesota. Favorable schedule for the Illini. And then Michigan, of course, 12-0. Next up in the Big Ten West would have been Wisconsin, 6-3 in the conference with the head-to-head win over 6-3 Iowa. Nebraska finishing at 5-4 with the head-to-head win over Minnesota. They take a step back this year, 7-5. The Big Ten East shapes up almost exactly how it did last year. Michigan 12-0, Ohio State 11-1, Penn State 10-2 with 2 losses to both of the above teams. So we'll do a postseason episode here airing next week where we talk about these conference championship matchups, see how that impacts the playoff, who wins the national championship, and all that fun stuff. So plenty of good stuff coming on the Cornhusker Connection Network. I'm Brandon Shanahan. This has been the Big Ten Preview Show on the Cornhusker Connection Network. Thanks for stopping by. Go Big Red.